another important part of the project right here. This is David.
Hey, thank you. Nice to meet you.
All right, so what does David do?
David does all of our technology. So he handles all of the internet, the communications, and then instrumental in helping to set up the archive and everything.
So
he
this
brings
is
a whole web experience.
This is definitely not a one-man project.
No, this is of several people on different fronts. So
what are we looking at here?
So as soon as you come into the refugee camps, then what you end up seeing is the root of what created the refugees, right? Because we have to take them back. And so what you see here, this is a picture owned by this guy, and this is what his wife said in an interview. She said that the ocean is so vast, it takes 24 hours to cross by plane. Each soldier that died, their bones built the bridge for the Hmong to come to America, which at the essence of, at the end of the day, it's the sacrifices of the veterans that really allow the Hmong to built the bridge for the Hmong to come to America. And so what you see here, this is our touch station. It's got declassified CIA, declassified government documents that show the involvement, reports to the president, all kinds of different data. The Geneva Accord that made the war in Laos a secret because it's supposed to be a neutral country, not to be involved in the war. But it gives you the foundation for the things that created the refugees.
Very nice. So it'd be like historians.
So
dream,
the roots of what it is, and you can actually really touch the documents. It's different than the textbook when you actually see declassified documents.
So if I really wanted to see what they were writing about Jerry Daniels, it's right here.
Yes, and like this is General Vang Pao's letter asking for help when they were evacuating the country. So a lot of these documents are all here. Li Dupo asking for help. All kinds of different documents, stats on populations and how things were happening back then. The Geneva Accord 1954, like you said there, and a ton of stuff, but you could spend countless hours going through that. And then right after the information, then you come here and it shows the medals. It shows these are actually mortar shells from the plaintiff jars. This sets the sacrifices of the veterans that allowed the Hmong to created the refugees. What you see here is Captain B, and he talks about if you were a politician, if you were a business owner, when you cross the Mekong into Thailand, then you lose all of that. You leave all that at the river. You're basically a person entering another country illegally, so you kind of lose all your rights and all your identities. And he says that that's what happened to a lot of Hmong men who became, all of a sudden found themselves in a refugee camp. Hmong are very independent people, and now all of a sudden they start to develop diseases of the heart, diseases of anxiety, diseases of guilt, survivor's guilt, not being able to provide for your family, and a lot of people start dying that way. And so this is all rooted in, again, the conditions that created the Hmong refugees. Okay, and then as you come right next to that, you're going to see this huge mural, 32 feet by 8 feet. What we did here is we did a drive for 6 months, and we got 1,000 refugee pictures. What you see as far as T numbers is this means that you're a temporary alien card and a refugee of Thailand. And so typically when you see these, you've been approved already. This is the last stage of the immigration process where they approve you and then they assign you a number and you take pictures and you get ready to go to America. So what's very powerful about this and it draws people in is the collective of all the pictures together. It's 800 different people, personalities. You see people who are happy, people who are sad, people who are angry, people who are lost, people who are broken. And so it's the totality, it's the total impact of seeing all those voices at once trying to speak to you, and that's what's captured here. And a lot of these kids, they're very prominent leaders. You'll see families. There's one family here who 7 of their kids are all doctors.
Let's take a look. Point them out. Let's take a so, we look at this. We just see poor refugees, but the audacity that what will these people become?
This is Sang-Soo and his family, and so he's a pharmacist. His wife is a pharmacist. Their brothers and sisters, they're all dentists and doctors, medical doctors.
So on this wall, they look like nobodies, but in this country, they all become
Yes, it is about the resilience.
Medical providers and doctors.
Yes, and your family is also here as well. Your mom's here.
Oh yeah, there goes mom.
Yes, and your dad's.
We're right here.
Yes.
There's my sister.
And that's your uncle, and that's your dad right there.
I don't think I submitted mine.
Yeah, I think you were still an infant. So
yeah,
I
there was
pictures of
one.
you.
I might be up here.
You might be in there
I might
somewhere.
be, but yeah.
And so Judge Paul Lowe is here somewhere. Your sister, who's an instructional superintendent, is also here. And so it's very powerful to see, like a lot of times I do this stuff and it's just sad stuff.
You never know what these kids will become.
You always just think about it and it's just tragedy after tragedy. And it's just sadness. But if you look at this, you have to flip that around and look at the resiliency that we started with this and what we were able to build.
Absolutely.
And so you got to pivot it and take the sadness and transform it to resiliency. So I think this is the draw of this exhibit is the power of all those personalities. And then as you come here, this is what Mac Thompson said is in 1975, after the simultaneous fall of Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, Thailand would become the largest refugee crisis in the world, resulting in the largest resettlement of Southeast Asians, for the first time non-European refugees in American history.
It's a completely different wave.
Yes, and he said that this is Mac Thompson, who was second in command of the Indochina program. So this is his own words through his evidence. He gave us all the statistics and data.
Is he still alive?
He passed away just a few years ago, but we did bring him to Hmongstory 40.
Yes.
He did speak, but he said that if only Vietnam had happened, if only Cambodia had fell, if only the Secret War happened by itself in this isolated event, there would basically be very few or almost no Southeast Asians in America. So 1975 is very significant in that way because all of our communities are tied together because of 1975.
Wow, that's why it's in huge numbers.
Yes, it's huge numbers. Cambodians by far were the largest community that came here, but because after the fall of the Khmer Rouge in like 78, 79, a lot of their people returned back to their country to help rebuild. So that's why there's less Cambodians here in America.
Oh, interesting.
And so this is our display that talks about the spread of communism, and it ties in all the different communities. So in Hmongstory 40, when we did the Sacramento exhibit, we had the Mien community have an organization tell us about their migration. The Laotian community, a nonprofit, talk about their migration. Vietnamese and Cambodia also talk about it. And so this also reinforces 1975, why it's very, very significant. And here are these two big books that have massive newspaper archives of what was happening during the war. So if you're into history and you're a history fanatic, you can look at and go through all this and spend days here just reading about the war. And these are copies of real newspapers.
Wow.
That were covering that time. What you see here is a full-size pandal, very elaborate. Like I said, this is the traditional form of what you see animated out there. Typically, this stuff here talks about the re-education at the end of the war, all the struggles, having to flee, having to run into hiding, getting into combat, trying to just defend their families, running, surviving in the jungle on subsistence, getting shot, and then crossing and coming into the Mekong, coming into the camps, going on the buses and leaving to America. So this is what you see as a traditional art form of pandal, story cloths, and this is what we used as a foundation for doing the animation. Because even as a kid and as when I looked at these things, they almost want to move, so it was logical for us to just say, hey, let's animate the traditional art form to make it very, really, very powerful, but then still true to the form, right? So that's why we did it that way. When you come along this wall here, you will understand the progression of after leaving Longcheng and some of the things that the Hmong people had to go through, the dangerous trekking, the shooting at Hand Hip, a lot of the histories here. In the future, we use Hmongstory 40 content here, but in the future, this would just be digital panels because it's a little easier to load, and also it allows it to adapt. So we can do Hmong history here, we can easily change it to Cambodian history. We can easily change it to Laotian history, just running your different software inside.
So you think in the future these will be touch screens?
Touch screens,
Wow.
touch screens, and so that if this got put at Fresno State or any other place, it's easy to adapt. We could even tell a Oaxacan story, indigenous Fresno community story, and so that's the future. But here we just used things from Hmongstory 40 to really illustrate the formation of the camps, a little bit of that history.
No timeline here.
Timeline, yes. This is all the stuff we did for Hmongstory 40. And then this is when you come to the end of that, these are the camps that were inside Thailand. And so what you see in red, these are the Hmong and Laotian refugee camps. They are positioned in the north because the Hmong were coming across from Laos in that area there. And so you would get Nampong and then how the other camps got into there. What you see here in blue are Cambodian camps. And so these are camps that were just built for Cambodians.
Right along the border, huh?
Right along the border. And the Thai strategically did that as a buffer zone to keep the struggle or the war out of their country, So you can tell they're built as a buffer along the border, the Cambodian near the Cambodian border, and the Hmong and the Lao near the Laotian border as a buffer. And there were Vietnamese who were drifting from here through the through the Gulf of Thailand, coming into Thailand here. So there were two camps that were for Cambodians as well. And the Americans did not want communists in this country, so they were very, very hard on the Vietnamese that were coming through with that, the camps there as well. So as you get through the history, then we try to create a space that actually shows you visually what coming into the camps is like. What we have here is this diagrams of Vinay. This is the immigration process, so the selection process for people who are coming into the camps. If you got arrested, if you went to jail, it's kind of a flow chart of all the different processes that you can you have to go through.
Very interesting.
And then these are all official government, all official documents. So.
When were all these released?
These were from the early '80s, so about '81 or so, when they were forming all that stuff. And then visually, it's just crossing the Mekong, pictures keep coming in. And then here we start to talk about some of the other camps, Vinay, Cheng Kham, Nam Yao, and we got diagrams that were drawn by camp workers or by NGO. And so this shows Bantong, this shows Cheng Kham, this shows Suktua. And then people can kind of remember where their houses were. So we give diagrams and we also give pictures. And this is I'm not sure which one that one was there, but this is also Nam Yao. I think these were all Nam Yao. And so this kind of gives you an overview of the different camps. In the future, all the stuff is going to just be available online. And so our idea is to take everything that we built, the documentations, the photographs, and to really make a digital archive, digital repository that will park somewhere, and anybody who wants access to it can always access it for your personal growth or for educational, for degrees like doctorates or master's degrees. All this stuff will be available for everybody. And so that gives you an overview of the history. What you're coming into here is now you're coming into this immersive areas, and so we thought about how can we create rooms that allow people to relive that experience, or to be able to have them share that experience with their kids or any of the people who weren't really there. And so what you see here is this is our immersive room. That's Jerry Daniels. You see him there. He's the last CIA officer who stayed with the Hmong, but then he also he wrote the book on how to screen the Hmong for military service, and that was really important. In 1975, about 3,600 people came through to America, and exclusively he signed almost everybody. And that's what makes him kind of this mythical folktale hero of the Hmong people. It's because of the role that he played.
So you guys are recreating what would happen if you came down and
so what this is we invite people to actually come typically, like they would sit here, and so what we did is we actually laid the questions that were asked of the refugees. It was given us to by Mac Thompson as well from his collection. And so typically the translator would be on that end, another translator there, and then the interviewer would be there, and then the families would sit here. And so we positioned the room to try to capture the essence of what that feeling must have been like. And the questions are here, the data is there. But a lot of people say when they come into the space, they get chills on the back of their necks because it feels surreal. You know, like
so it's like, I mean, there's the picture.
Yes.
Yeah.
It then shows people, you know, getting screened, and there's pictures there, and there's interviews going on, and so this in its own room inside of a museum with all the data with very particular lighting would be very, very overwhelming for a lot of people.
Oh yeah.
You know, but it's very hard for you to to explain to your kids what this process is like unless you can create a space where they walk in, they can feel it, you can be with them there, and then this just creates that feeling. Okay?
Yeah.
So it's a very, very powerful
It's okay. We'll just keep going.
but it's a very emotional, very, very powerful part of the history that I think that we need to really capture it that way. And then as you leave this here, then what you're going to see is you're going to see official documents from that time, the X-rays, the applications, the medical exams being signed off on, and then all the paperwork that allow a person to be to be able to be free to leave to America. So they have to pass all this paperwork. Then you get the airplane tickets, the promissory note that you're going to pay back your plane ticket to when you find a job here in America. And so refugees didn't come here for free.
How'd they follow up on that?
Most people paid it back.
Really?
So yeah,
Wow.
promissory, and this looks like $670, which is a fortune back in 1980.
Yeah. That's
so.
a lot of money. It still is.
It still is. And so this is part of Sang's collection, his family. And then the old Ison bags that people would bring. This is another family's piece, but all this shows the paperwork that collaborates that part of the experience. Okay.
Are you guys having tour guides?
Yes. So me, David, we try to get everybody here. So this is our blacksmith exhibit at the Legacy V9 Experience. This is a knife that's actually made in V9, and so the blacksmith, this is a knife that Erica Hagen gave us, and on this side it's got band V9 on there. I don't know if you can capture that. You see the engraving on the knife.
Yeah, I do.
Band V9, so that's where it was made. On the other side here, it's got the blacksmith's name. His name is Nia King Moana. And today his daughter happened to be visiting Hmong New Year from San Diego.
Wow.
And saw her dad. So that's him right there.
Wow.
And so that's the blacksmith that made this knife. He passed away in 2006.
Wow.
But yeah, that shows. And what this is for us to, back in Laos, villages would move with blacksmiths because they were so important. They made knives, they made nails, they made all these things, and so villages would move with them. What happens in Vinai is a whole bunch of blacksmiths from different villages, they moved together, into one area, and then they started to kind of challenge each other, and they made beautiful knives in Vinai. And so part of this exhibit is, if your father is a blacksmith and you want his legacy to live on, then you can bring his story and his knife, something that he made. It could be a knife, it could be saw, it could be other jewelry, but we start to build a really exquisite, sophisticated exhibition of blacksmith crafts, And this could be a standalone, really, really prominent, very sophisticated.
So where this exhibit's different is that it's very much community-based.
It is.
This is not like
it's
someone...
a space for people's legacies to live together.
It's not like me visiting the Civil War Museum where everyone's clearly gone. It's interesting because some of these people are very much still alive. And
yes, they are.
They're actively disappearing and passing away.
Yes.
And less
we
and
can
less
preserve
around.
it because this generation is still alive, but it's such a big part of our identity. then it can be blacksmiths also made saw too, you know. And so the story with saw is that, man, I heard this really great story about this saw that a father, daughter had given to Noah, and basically that saw, she talks about how her dad took 3 pieces of actual silver that they were paid dowry with, and they gave it to the daughter, and the daughter had to walk a day. 2 daughters had to walk a day to another village where there was a blacksmith, and they melted all the silver and made the saw. And so it's kind of a gesture of a father or a parent's love for their daughters that's instilled inside their sauna. And so if you were poor and you had less silver, you would only get one that has one of the little rings. To have 3, then it means that you're very prominent and very wealthy. And so Hmong people wore their wealth, and so that's
young people now have no idea. We take
the value of it, yes.
Yeah.
But this is, if you truly love your daughter, you would melt silver, which is the price of dowry, and then you would make custom jewelry as a gesture of your love for your daughter.
Wow, I never knew that.
Yeah. And so these shows another knives. These are actually made in Vinai too. These little things. Hmong people believe that when you're born, your soul is very weak, and so a lot of times if you get frightened as a child, your soul separates from your body, and so they made a lot of these little souls that to kind of keep the spirit and the intact with the body. So that's why they made a lot of these for kids to wear. And sometimes when you get sick and it gets accelerated, then they start making sophisticated ones to kind of reinforce it. But that's a common belief in Hmong culture. So these are petiking tools, and so they would take clean fabric, get wax, put in patterns, and then they would dye it. And then wherever the wax made contact with bandauna, it would stay white. And so that's petiking. It's a very particular style of making like clothes like this.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't think, does anyone still do that?
They still do it a little bit, yeah.
Really?
But it's a lost art form. But we have a lot of photos in Erica's collection that talk with that. Very eloquent photos.
Wow.
And so the next room that we built, this is the inside of a refugee home. And so, back then, it's not uncommon for families to, like, if all your cousins came together, they would put all the rice and all the food into one community bowl, and everybody would eat together. And it's a form of like brotherhood and love, And so, what we did here is we tried to introduce the room with this is a cart. Carts were a big part of life, and then just the interiors of homes as you come in. And this is typically what a home would look like. It's just made out of bamboo. This is an old wool blanket with a mosquito net, with an oil lamp, with just a pot that they would do things. This picture was so powerful when I saw it. It just shows a father spending time with his daughter, the very, very basic part of it. So we try to do something that's very true, and to create this room, we studied a lot of photographs so that we could get the nuances right, And so I think people coming here, it's kind of really cool. They really like this room. They like to rock it. And then we staged it with different things, and then we put this to make it look like it's a door opening to the outside, and you're kind of.
That's the reality there, isn't it? Yeah, pretty real and raw.
Real and raw, so it's almost like you're eavesdropping on them visually, and so a little uncomfortable, but it's cute, And so to make it more human, and these are just pots and pans and different things that people would use every day. This is tops that were made by my uncle just for this project. There's an aluminum flashlight that we were talking about up there. So these are real reminiscent things about. And then here we just had steels of the interiors of the homes that we use for references, and this kind of helps to frame that time. People come here, they lie down and they pose with everything, but it really does take them back, to that time.
People have to be cautious walking through here because you might not understand what you're walking through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reality is, it's just kids don't understand any of this stuff and there's no real way to really tell them about it unless you create a space. And then they can just come sit down and they can realize what it is. So that's the power of creating a space instead of just using words to describe it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then these are traditional pots and pans of what they were eating in Vinai, white-coated pots. Anybody from that era will remember this stuff. We tried to do bowls to show rations of food, pots and pans, but...
I haven't eaten out of one of these for the longest time. I forgot about them.
Yeah.
I mean, Americans use porcelain. This is like metal with coated metal.
I think they were lead coated too. They were kind of dangerous, but a lot of people ate out of them, you know. And especially, I think these were lead coated right here.
Yeah,
bright orange things, but you know. And like I said, again, this is a learning museum. So for the community to come and say, hey, I've got something, or you guys did, it would be better if you guys did something else. Like we invite you to bring your experience, bring your materials, bring your artifacts, so that we can really do a really impactful museum in the 25th anniversary, and the 50th anniversary. So this comes into another part of the refugee life experience is about how they communicated back and forth from America and Thailand. And so what we did is we staged this room. We put a computer inside this old stereo that will allow us to play different audio cassettes. And back then, people communicated through audio cassettes because telephones were very expensive. So you would wait. You never hear phone calls or somebody's voices until they arrived on an audio cassette. And a lot of families, they would, you know, especially for my family, you know, we'd set aside a Friday or Saturday night, and then we'd all sit down on the sofa and listen to the audio cassette. And we'd sit as a family and we'd listen to our grandmother or uncle who's still living in Thailand talk about their struggles. And so we created this as a way of, you know, each of these has a little story. Each of these has a little story, and this right here. This right here is the story of and families would come and sit, and so we invite them to actually come, you know, shoot from behind, and you know, a lot of times families would sit, and so we created this space to just kind of recreate that, you know, going back to the 80s, and it's cool that it comes out of the stereos,
pretty
speakers,
neat.
and so it kind of gives you that real feel of like you're transported back in time, where this was the way that they communicated. It feels very authentic, and our idea is to have the community have them donate like their audio cassettes, and so we can digitize them, make a complete library. So if you're wanting to hear messages about people, you know, leaving for another country, then you could access through a digital library.
So I'll bet $100 that little kids came here and could not figure out what to do with this.
They probably didn't know what that was, and so I don't know if you saw this one, but this is also what we did is we put Erica, and what it is this is the technology from the hotel keys.
Oh.
And so there's a sensor inside there with a computer, and so as soon as you put it, it identifies the ID, and it picks it up, and then it just plays it.
Wow.
It calls it up.
That's cool.
And so this is the piece we did about Erica. We took her radio interviews and then we pieced them together to create the story about who she was.
Wow.
You know? So then you can kind of put the cassette and go back in time and talks about who she was.
So give us like a 3-minute on Erica, so that we're not talking about some random person here.
Yeah. No, Erica was, man, Erica could have done anything with her life. She was just a remarkable human being. She did come down with brain cancer, and then, you know, when she went into hospice care, she donated her life's work to us, and we slowly scanned all of her photographs. It's about 6,000 photographs. Wow. But it's really hard to believe that an American woman who could have done anything with her life, she chose to spend so much time with the Hmong, you know, and she lived with the Hmong, she took all these photos, and she really put a different light on the Hmong experience, you know. Her photos are very compassionate, and not only did she spend time with the Hmong in Thailand, she spent a lot of time in South America and even in Africa, helping other communities as well. A total humanitarian, and it's still overwhelming to think that all of her photos were seen through the lens and the eyes of one person, you know, the different amount of lives she touched. So. But that's what this stage is like. It takes you back in time. You know, creates a timepiece, but then also a very human story about how people connect. And our goal is to, like I said, to have the community donate and to create a digital library. I think the digital library can address a lot of issues of mental health, generational trauma, and all those things. And so it's a huge asset. And through the video cassettes, people really revealed and talked about their true struggles. So a lot of the true history is preserved in audio cassettes. And that's why it's important for us to make that effort.
Very nice.
So. What you see here is this is a prop for Bandao, and so typically women. It's very common if you walk into any household back in the 80s when Hmong were just here in America. This is what they would be doing in the evening time. There's no social media, no internet, so they would practice the craft. And
so this is all this material needed.
Yes, the stuff that women would whip on dauna, and so we made this beautiful backdrop, and we encourage women to sit down. So it could be daughters, they could be grown.
So someone's grandma could come here and just do her thing right here if she wanted to.
Yes, or a bunch of sisters who are now old women, they could come together and pose. Or I'm sure if a mother took her daughter and she's not doing bandao now, they could kind of relive that experience.
Wow. Days before social media and YouTube and Facebook.
Yeah.
That's what they did.
Yeah. So it's really, really, really cool.